Good afternoon, Smile Mentor family. We have the privilege today of interviewing a key All-On expert that is not a dentist. He is on our side of the fence, the patient side. Steve Anderson, he is the founder, one of the founders of the Crown Council. Dentists know what that is. That's kind of a big deal. There's, I think, 2,000 dentists that strive for excellence. He also does Total Patient Services, which is basically takes dentists and walks them in their clinic through the process of properly engaging, educating, and treating the customer with respect. So we are privileged to have him on. He's going to share how dentistry changed his life, literally saved it. You're also going to get to hear a lot about what he does and some questions that I didn't even think to answer. One of them being, if you're talking to the clinician, if you had to go get this procedure done, who would you have it done by? Great question. So to Steve Anderson, thank you. I think you guys are going to enjoy this, and it'll really leave you, as it did me, even more educated as a patient. Appreciate you guys following us, and any questions you have, please feel free to reach out. You haven't subscribed, please do so. My shameful plug, as well as make sure any questions you have, you can read about us more in the description. Have a blessed day, guys. Thanks for smiling with us. Steve, before we go any further, thank you. Thank you for carving out time.
Happy to do it.
Opening up your home, letting us come and take a part of a work day and from your family time too. And so thank you.
Yep.
Really appreciate that. I got a quote that I found about you. But first, before we start off that, what was the best thing that happened to you yesterday?
Yesterday. So, yesterday came back from, actually flew in from Las Vegas, did a weekend marathon with one of my daughters.
A real marathon?
Real marathon, ran 26 miles. And she ran with me, had another one that did a half with us, another one that did a 60-mile bike race at the same time. So we had the family athletic weekend.
Wow.
So it was a blast. So totally brutal to the body, but it was a great family activity. So it was fun.
Awesome. Why did I ask you it that way?
Well, because that's part of our culture.
Yeah.
Part of what we teach.
Yeah. And, right? And that's one of the things that it's almost been 2 years now, I think, since I saw your presentation, or it's been a little while in Fort Worth, but I got to sit through and hear one of your trainings to a bunch of other doctors. And that was one of the things that you brought up that I took note of. That's why I brought that up. But, talk to me. Why is that part of your culture?
It all has to do with keeping the team focused on the right stuff. So we talk about how you open your morning meeting with that conversation. What's the best thing that happened yesterday, right? Because it keeps everybody focused on what's working, not to say you're going to sweep what's not working under the carpet, but you start with what's working that you want to keep doing. And so that's always, our recommendation is you always start with a focus on what's working. And that takes some concentration. For most people, we have no trouble figuring out what's not working. We can come up with that in an instant, but staying focused on what's working and keeping that in the forefront is key. Key for a successful team.
So in the dental world, you've made quite a name for yourself. Most of the patients, you're a behind the scenes guy though. Patients don't really know who you are. And so I took this excerpt. Said over the last 20 years, you've spoken at every major dental meeting in North America, conducted hundreds of seminars all over the English-speaking world, worked with thousands of dental practices, increasing their productivity through patient communication, written over 100 articles for dental industry publication. You've authored 5 books and produced dozens of audio and video learning programs. That's you, huh?
Part of what I've done.
That's part of what you've done. Good answer. That's not who you are, but part of what you've done.
And I would say probably in the context of dentistry, one of the most important things that doesn't talk about is I am first and foremost a patient.
Which is why I wanted to sit down with you on this. You're not a dentist, although a lot of dentists know who you are.
Mhm.
You that's your livelihood. That's where you focus your time, energy, and effort, and your philanthropy. And I mean, you do a lot. You got multiple businesses going on, but you being a patient first. Talk about TOPS for a second. First of all, what does TOPS stand for, and what is it?
So Total Patient Service, the Total Patient Service Institute, is a education and consulting, dental management, practice management consulting company. Our focus is optimizing the practice and the team to create the best patient experience. So we take everything that a dentist and a team knows how to do clinically, and then around that, we build the systems and the process to make sure it works for the patient. So when you think about it, dentistry doesn't happen until after the patient says yes. The patient holds the keys to clinical dentistry.
Right.
You've got to have the clinical expertise, but you don't get to use that until after the patient gives you the thumbs up and says, I'm good to go.
Mm-hmm.
And most clinical dentistry, there is far more clinical dentistry not practiced than practiced anywhere.
That's right.
Because there are, what we find is more recommendations made than are accepted. So more people would get more of what they need if the team were properly trained and had the right systems in place to make it easier for patients to accept treatment that they really need.
So you've set out to help train these clinics and these clinicians, the doctor and his team, on how to better serve the patient so that they can be a better practice and practice more of their clinical skills, which is really what they're good at.
Correct.
Fair way to say that?
We are the door to more clinical dentistry. That's what we do.
And that's really one of the reasons why I asked and so grateful you accepted our request to be on this educational documentary, because you have dealt with more dentists than I have. You've heard more horror stories than I have.
And good stories.
And good stories. Mm-hmm. And that's where I don't want to just focus on the negative. I love what we'll cover in a minute, your lessons you learned from Lenny. I think that was his name.
Lanny, yeah.
But in the, with your experience in the dental world, you were able to see things and help make a more educated patient out there. And so, I still, before we kind of cover some of those questions on the patient side of things, tell me if you would, why dentistry? You're not a doctor.
Not
Why?
a dentist. Had no intention. I didn't even know how to spell dentist when we first started. Dentistry found us. So we were originally a company that was working with all kinds of businesses, working on the customer experience. And we had some dentists that stumbled across our material, applied it, and came back to us and said, this has not only transformed our practice and our patient experience and our practice in general, but it's changed our lives in every aspect. Not only applied it in the practice, but everywhere in their lives. And they came to us and said, more dentists need to hear this. More dentists need to know about this. So they came to us and asked us, you got to get this out more in dentistry. And there was a specific application, a specific reason why that was the case. But yeah, dentistry found us.
How long ago?
Over 30 years ago.
Over 30 years ago. You look younger than I do.
I got started at age 2.
All right. So dentistry found you. Dentists are a rare breed. So what, tell me about what it was like getting into that, I mean, so first you're doing it for multiple verticals. I mean, this is almost identical to what happened with 620. I mean, we were doing it for a lot of different companies, the marketing and business development, and stumbled across it, right? And so I learned a lot of lessons in starting to work with dentists. Tell me some of the lessons or the impressions you learned when you started working with dentists. Tell me about them.
So from a consumer standpoint, this is something I think it's important for consumers to know. Dentistry is a tough business to be in from a psychological standpoint. When you think about it, every day patients walk into a dental practice, and one of the first things they say is, I hate the dentist.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what other profession, except for maybe attorneys, gets that as their opening greeting? It's like, I hate you. I mean, it's not a great,
Yeah.
not a great opening. And because of that, dentistry in general tends to really step over itself, and rightfully so, to make it a great experience for the patient, make it comfortable, all of those things, right? That's what they do. And one of the hazards, if you're not careful, is because most dental practices don't want to offend the patient, they might be conservative in their diagnosis and their treatment planning because they don't want to alarm them. They don't want to run them off because we've already started off 3 feet behind by saying, I hate the dentist. So I don't want to do more a lot of times than what the patient is expecting. So it's contrary to what most consumers think. The press loves to have a heyday that dentists overdiagnose and that they're recommending all this unneeded treatment. And the reality is exactly the opposite.
Really?
There might be some dentists that do that, but they are a very, very small minority. They get into the press because they're so unusual. But I'm not going to say the vast majority. The vast number of dentists are very conservative in their approach, want to connect with the patient, really earnestly want to do what's right, and many times don't necessarily tell them everything that is necessarily possible, right? So that's the piece of it, where creating an environment where the dentist can speak openly and lay everything out on the table so the patient can make the right choices for themselves. That's one of the keys.
I came into this as an implant patient off some failed dental work, and my family has been, and you and I have discussed this, that because our niche was dental implants and the All-On-X procedure when we were marketing for these dentists, those kind of patients are even more so. You take 100 of them, how many of those are going to have, whether it's justified or not in their own mind, which is reality, perception is reality, especially for that, they kind of come in a little aggressive, like I did, and that's what's helped us be so effective in this, because we knew how to communicate that story. But how did you transition and really learn and almost grow a compassion for dentists? I mean, I hear it, and I'm almost envious of it because I'm working on it. I'm just not there yet. So tell me and that's a good point, that it is a hard job. It is not easy. I mean, you're dealing in people's mouths, and I mean, I wouldn't want to do it.
So I think two parts of that. One, as I mentioned, I'm a patient first, right? It's the patient experience. That's what we work on. That's what we teach. But more importantly, I'm a patient. I mean, I've been in the chair probably more than 99% of America. So I'm a product of the product. I've had more dental work done myself than 99% of America. Dentistry's changed my life, literally changed my life. And so my passion to help practices and format them in a way that they can do that for more people. Yeah, I'm all in on this. So I've had the personal experience. I know what it can do for people, and helping practices structure themselves in such a way so they can do more of that for other people. That's what I'm all about.
How did it change your life?
So in my particular case, I had a rare genetic airway obstruction. I couldn't breathe, but I didn't know I couldn't breathe. So my air intake was very, very abnormal and very low. It took decades to figure that out. And it was a very astute dentist who diagnosed it, laid out, set the whole table for me, and explained what the long-term consequences of that were, and laid out a treatment plan that made it very, very easy to say yes, and did the multiple procedures that it took. to correct that genetic airway problem, and I can breathe today, and I got a pretty decent smile out of the deal too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it changed my life.
So you really have, um, you've had a different kind of life change experience with the dentist. I mean, they literally, it's not elective in your situation. It was,
I did have a choice to make,
well, sure. I
and
mean,
it was a
I guess open
necessary
heart
choice,
surgery
right?
is elective,
Right,
but
but it was a necessary choice.
and so that helped you. Okay,
Changed
that's
my
what.
life
Yeah,
in
and that
more ways than one.
and it gives you, it gave you a new heart for dentists and what they can really do.
100%.
That's good. You're gonna help balance me out. I appreciate that. Seriously. Um, and the life change side of dentistry, that is what has been time and time and time again on all these interviews I've done, not just for this documentary, but for, all the different clinics I've worked for. They'll send me patients, I'll go interview them. And there is a common theme of the power of a smile and how it can change. And I tell these dentists and these clinicians, the power that dentists hold is huge. I mean, it really is. And so that's what I got so excited in hearing your presentation and getting to know what you're doing, multifaceted, but especially through TOPS, when, seeing that you're trying to make, you really are enhancing the patient experience and making that clinic a better clinic. It's not just a living for you. I mean, I saw the passion side, which I now understand more clearly. But talk to me about, having worked with so many dentists, what have they told you about how it affects them? I ask all these people how it affects them once they've had the work. Talk to me from the dentist. How does it affect them when they?
The word they use with me is game changer. Missing link in practice uh, allows them to speak freely and openly with the patient on what really should be done or could be done. And it opens up an avenue of communication between the dentist and the patient that in most cases did not exist before. So it changes the way they operate, changes the way they practice.
So you're a bridge. You really are a bridge to the patient for these, because they go to school, they're not trained this stuff in school.
Correct.
And so now they got to go out and work with a marketplace that they're not really ready in a lot of senses to work with, especially the really good clinicians. Rarely are they good salesmen,
Yep.
right? Rarely are they good businessmen. They like to work on teeth and mouth,
yeah,
and
excellent technicians and clinicians.
yeah.
100%.
And so you're that bridge.
Originally, when we started, we were labeled the missing link in dentistry. That was the term that some of the most prominent clinicians in the industry titled what we were doing as the missing link between the patient and the dentist. It made everything work.
You teach way more, though, when I've heard this practice, and that's kind of why I brought even some of that up. You teach way more than just how to be nicer to a patient. You teach way more than how to make sure you follow up with them. You teach life skills, and almost an attitude adjustment, an attitude change, a culture change with these practices. I've gotten to go through it. How would you summarize? You said game changer. You said, so after a doctor goes through and his clinic goes through the TOPS program, what can they expect?
A number of things. One, they will think about what they do differently. There will be a complete frame change of how they see the practice of dentistry, their team, and the patient. So they'll see it differently. They'll think about it differently. They will act differently. So there will be a whole different vocabulary and skill set that they'll bring to the table in the patient experience. And because of that, the patient relationship will be different. Our most common comment we get from dentists and team members after they start implementing is they say, our patients have changed. Well, the patient didn't change. The dentist changed and the team changed because they're approaching the patient in a different way. And so they get a better connection with the patient, more open communication, and better results for everybody all the way around.
That's powerful. I mean, because you're right, nothing changed except internally. And in that internal change, now how they relate to those coming in through the doors changes, which makes the patient react different, makes them appreciate the dentist. Because I have been to some good ones,
Yeah.
right? You know, and there's such a big contrast. Let's talk about that piece of it before we jump into that. One last thing, tell me about Lenny, the gold medalist that you got to know. Tell me about the lesson. I believe it was on focus. If I
100%. In fact, interestingly enough, he and I did a webinar last night together.
Are you kidding?
We did. It was great. So Lanny Basham, I've known for well over 20 years. Olympic gold medalist in the sport of riflery. We made a connection many years ago through our youth program, Eagle University. And he and I we sync. Our beliefs are the same. Our philosophy is the same. His methodology is remarkable. Has a fascinating story. But one of the key pieces of his philosophy and the system that he teaches for winning, he trains the best of the best. He trains Olympic athletes. He trains the tops of any competitive arena. And a big part of his philosophy is the focus on what's working and being solution focused, right? Which is a simple idea. We violate it every day. One of the things that we talk about all the time is that you can't focus on the opposite of an idea, right? You can't say, don't think about pink elephants. Don't think about the Statue of Liberty, right? Well, the first image that pops in your mind is the very thing I told you not to do. But we violate that all the time. In every area of life, you have to stay focused on what you want and the solution you want, instead of worry and concern and all those things that reinforce what you don't want.
Which, how long have you been applying that to your own life? How long have you been applying?
So I went to my first continuing education experience when I was 12 years old.
12?
My dad ran the largest ad agency in the Western United States.
Really?
He came home one day from work and just offhandedly said, there's a big seminar going on at our local university, and some of the top speakers in the world are coming for 3 days. We're helping promote it. I got a couple extra tickets. Do you want to go? And he kind of walked out of the room thinking that a 12-year-old would have no interest.
Yeah, that you'd say no.
In a seminar for business people. And I was all over it. So I grabbed one of the tickets and I rode my bicycle. This was a different era. I rode my purple Schwinn Stingray bicycle that I did my paper route on. I rode it across town and locked it up and walked into that basketball arena with 20 some odd thousand other business people from our community and sat there riveted for 3 days.
And you're 12.
At 12. I still have the notes.
You're kidding.
That I took at 12. And it was people like Art Linkletter.
Wow.
Paul Harvey, Zig Ziglar. I mean, it was all the greats of that day were there.
Oh my gosh.
And so I took voracious notes. And that was my first experience. So how long have I been applying this? Well, attempting to. My whole life.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you just phrased it at the end, which is where I was going to go, attempting to. So does it get easier? How much
I think in some areas, yes, it gets easier. In some areas, the more you do something, the easier it becomes.
Sure.
Repetition is part of, so we teach specific skills, right?
Right.
Total patient service. We teach specific skills. So at first, they're foreign, they're different, they may not feel comfortable. The more you use them, the more you practice them, the more you do, just like any other skill, they become natural, they become a part of you, right? And so, yeah, so there's a conscious process that you do something long enough, it becomes part of your unconscious
Your
or
nature.
subconscious, right? You're just able to do it. Most things are learned. Most things are a learned skill. So when I say attempting to, yeah, I mean, everyday application and learning, I think it's part of the whole process. You're never done. And once you think you're done, you are done.
Yeah. So how often do you have to coach yourself?
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Walk me through a Steve coaching session.
So part of that is looking at, and we teach our practices this, is walking through a process every day of saying, and this is another Lanny thing, is what's working. What am I doing that's working that I want to continue doing? That's repeatable. That's working. Number two, what am I learning? And usually we learn from our mistakes and things that we don't. So what am I learning that I need to now apply those lessons? And then the third question is, what am I going to do? So what's working? What did I learn? What am I going to do now? The same or different? So we challenge teams to do that every day. I think everybody would benefit from doing that every day, of going through that analysis process.
How do you get over beating yourself up? So you're highly competitive. I can just tell that. That's great. There's a good competitive nature to you. You are highly successful. You've gotten to a high level of success, and I can appreciate that. I believe that in order to get to that level that I think you are, that I've witnessed, that there's a attitude adjustment that, self-talk is challenging, right? Or really inspiring, but the positive self-talk is not natural, right? Like okay, I'll speak autobiographically. I don't know everybody in this world, but me, you brought up in your presentation once, you have a high school kid who plays football, he throws 1 interception but 10 touchdowns, and you ask him, how was the game? What's he going to talk about?
Talk about the interception.
That's right. And because we tend to want to go there, and it's that human nature side of it, and we don't have time to go into all of that, but how, the negative self-talk, when did you learn to overcome or master that?
I don't know that you ever master. I think it's a constant effort. So I'm a motorcycle rider. Call me crazy. I ride motorcycles.
Harleys?
I love speed, not the drug, but bikes.
So Ducatis or Harleys?
Harleys.
Okay.
And one of the things that I learned from riding a motorcycle is this key lesson for life. The bike goes where your eyes go. So whatever you're looking at, that's where you're going. So for example, if you're concerned about going off the edge of the road and you're looking at the edge of the road, you're going off the edge of the road. The bike's going to go where you're looking, right? And that's a lesson for life, which is you go where your eyes go. Where you choose to focus is where you're going to go. So it goes back to that. You can't focus on the opposite of an idea. So if someone says, I don't want to be like my miserable father was,
they're going to be like their miserable father.
Your gaze is in the wrong direction versus saying, what I want is, and you have the picture of what you want the finished product to be. It's a simple concept, and we think, yeah, it's common sense. And people violate that all the time. So same thing with thoughts, everything is, where's your focus? Where's your gaze?
Okay, so now let's see if I can apply this to this documentary, right? Let's see if we can have some practical sessions. And for our viewers out there, that was free, but that was valuable. Don't let the price fool you. I'm a patient. Let's take me for an example. I had a 5-unit bridge on my top that the anchor teeth, I had 3 anchor teeth. They had failed. The previous dentist didn't leave much. They failed. And now I got to make a decision. Is it time to just go ahead and now I'm the guy?
Mhm.
So now I can either, am I going to focus on why this is going to fail? Am I going to focus on how the dentist is going to screw me over? Am I going to focus on, or am I going to focus on, I know I'm going to find that right clinician and I'm willing to put forth the effort and I know I'm going to have that smile that I dreamed of. I mean, it's really 2 different mindsets with the same problem. And would you say that's a fair, rough
Sure. So
example?
if I'm the patient, like I said, I am a patient. Here's my first personal responsibility is to get very, very clear on what I want. What is my objective? So let me give you an example. For some, the objective is better health. So I've talked to implant patients in the past whose primary objective was they want to be able to eat because they know that nutrition is critical to their health and they got to have teeth that work if they're going to get the right nutrition. So having something that works so they can be and get in better health, that's their top priority. For others, it's more of an emotional appearance related issue. I talked to an implant patient once who said that she had never taken her full set of dentures out in front of her husband of 40 years.
Yeah.
Right. So for her, getting implant secured dentures was an embarrassment appearance. That was her primary objective, is I want it to look good. Yes, I want it to function. Yes, I want it to be comfortable, but the main reason I'm doing this is I want it to look good so I don't have to be embarrassed. For other people, there might be other considerations. So as a patient, first thing is, what is the number one priority? Why do you want to do this? And what is the most important thing to you? Because that needs to be expressed to your clinician. The clearer you are with your clinician on what your personal objectives are, because it's not about the teeth. Now, I know that might sound funny in a documentary that's about teeth. It's not about the teeth. It's what you want those teeth to do for you.
Yeah, the end result.
Whether it's health, whether it's appearance, whether it's peace of mind, whether it's social accept. I mean, there are dozens of different reasons you would do this. The clearer you are on what your personal objectives are and what you really want out of this, and you can express that to your clinician, the better outcome you'll have. It's not about the teeth at first.
I mean, that's a beautiful point when you talk about that it's not about the teeth, that the teeth are a tool to get you your main objective. And you just said there's multiple objectives. And, as you were talking, I'm relating, I'm going back to my mom. My mom is the one who I really started this journey with. She was my inspiration to really go and help her do this because she was in a denture forever. And, she was one of those ones, my dad's never seen it out.
Right.
And it really is, it's amazing how powerful it is. But, you talk about the reasons why to get this done. Do me a favor. Most people would think, well, God, everybody's going to know why they would want to have it done, right? But sometimes you don't know.
You don't know. And what I would say is, most people, when they go into a dental office, if you're not careful, the conversation immediately centers around teeth. What are we going to do? What kind of implant? What, it's teeth, 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 teeth. And you got to take a step back and you got to say, hey, the first conversation is, what is the outcome that we want? Not the tooth outcome. What is the outcome that we want? Is it better health, better appearance, and the why behind that? That's the first topic of conversation. And a great clinician will take the time on the front end to understand the why and what the real objective is before they start talking about the teeth.
What would be off the top of your head, and I'm sure it will not be in a fully exhaustive list, but what would be the reason somebody would get the All-On-X so that we can at least help stir in those patients' minds before they get in that clinical chair? Because once you're in that chair, intimidation can set in, especially for these kind of patients. So if we can help them do homework ahead of time, what are the reasons you know of or that you're aware of that you would get the All-On-X procedure done?
Okay, so there would be 6 reasons.
Okay.
Number one is money. Now that might sound strange on the front end to say, well, this is an expensive procedure. I do it. Yeah. In other words, for the investment that you're making and the value you're getting, this will change your life. And so you want to do this because in the long run, it may save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in healthcare, in other health related issues. So
Okay.
it's an investment that has a huge return. Number two would be appearance, right? So my primary objective is I want them to look good. I want to be able to go out with the people that I love to be with and be able to smile and not be self-conscious. I want to be able to live and be me and feel totally comfortable in my own teeth. We usually say on my own skin, but in my own teeth, I want to be totally comfortable. So appearance for a lot of people. For some people, it's a time issue. So time, what does time have to do with what you think of the time that you have to spend? Let's take a full denture. The time that you have to spend cleaning and maintaining and taking it in and taking it out. The time you spend worrying about, gee, is it going to slip out? Does it fit? So for a lot of people, it's just like, no, I want something that'll be in there and stay in there to save me time. I don't want to spend the time wrestling with what I've wrestled with in the past. For other people, it's peace of mind. They want to know that they're doing everything they can do for their total health, for their peace of mind, they want the peace of mind. They want to trust that they're doing the best for themselves. For other people, it's comfort. Please give me some. There are thousands and thousands of people that have suffered with a denture that doesn't fit and is uncomfortable, and it's a miserable existence. So just give me something that fits and that's comfortable. And then for others, it's health. This will be a better long-term solution that will give me better health because I'll be able to get better nutrition. I will be a bit healthier, hopefully have a better quality of life and a longer life. So that encompasses the reasons that most people would do this procedure. Either one or more of those all factor in.
Yeah. And one that I have been personally surprised at, and as I've done and sat with a lot of patients, you can actually do this procedure for others. And what do I mean by that? So now you have, I know that when that bridge broke, my demeanor changed.
Sure.
I didn't want to even really be with my family much. Like I kind of wanted to isolate a little bit. I didn't want to until I saw. And so the effect that my attitude, the effect that my demeanor and presence, even just presence, I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky, like to laugh. I like to have fun. Man, that changed.
Sure.
So not only did that affect me, but what it did to my family and those loved ones and those that I worked with and that type of stuff. And so I've seen how powerful it is. Even it affects, and which is part of what you were talking about, the comfort side also, I think, and the confidence also when it does that.
Yeah.
But
so here's a truth that physiology impacts psychology. When we say that physiology impacts psychology, which means that how you carry yourself impacts how you feel. So if I never smile, you never see the corners of the mouth coming. If I never smile, that impacts psychologically how I think and how I feel. If I can smile, and I do that on a regular basis, that impacts how I think and how I feel. If I sit slunched over like this all the time, I'm going to feel different than if I'm sitting up straight and carrying myself in a confident way. Physiology impacts psychology. So If I have dental work that I'm embarrassed about, that doesn't look good, and I'm self-conscious, so I never smile, that impacts your psychology and your overall happiness. Proven fact.
And that's why this procedure, almost out of all of them, I mean, veneer is pretty powerful too, but this procedure out of all of them hits almost all of those buttons that you
100%.
talked about. Awesome. Because you guys work so much with different clinics all around the nation, yes?
Around the world.
Around the world. Okay. Okay, man, that's going to open up a whole nother list of questions, but let's start with the US right now. Because of your exposure and how many clinics you work with in the US right now, what would you say how would you describe the current dental environment in the US? Just give me a description on that.
Dentistry is the safest place to be in America today.
Dentistry is the safest?
Yeah, dental
What do you mean?
office is the safest place in terms of, we've gone through a pandemic. Everybody is very, very concerned about infection control and staying safe. A dental office most dental offices, if they're following protocol, are doing more to keep a safe, clean environment than any other environment in the world, including most hospitals and medical offices.
Most hospitals?
Most hospitals and medical offices.
Really?
Dentistry is top of the list. So current state of dentistry, yeah, safest place to be. So if you got any concerns about going to a dental office, you're good. It is a safe place to be. Patient safety and care is top priority in almost every dental office that I know of. Okay, so that's one. Number two, technologically, there are innovations that are taking place, have taken place, and are currently underway that have made things possible today that are, when you really think about it, unbelievable. Dentists today can make teeth that look more natural than natural teeth.
Yeah.
If they know what they're doing, if
Yeah.
they do it right. You can have, and I know in dentistry you can't use this phrase, but a permanent replacement, well, technically I can't say an implant is permanent. I get that. But it's a long-term replacement for your original tooth that frankly you don't have to worry that much about.
Right.
Once it's in, once it takes, it becomes part of you, and you can go on living your daily life and you don't have to worry about it. So from a personal safety standpoint, from a clinical standpoint, from a technology standpoint, it's an exciting place to be just based on everything that is possible today.
Where's the greatest room for improvement in dentistry today?
In what's ahead, there's always a better way to do things. And one thing that is now coming to the forefront finally is the impact and relationship that good oral health has with your overall health. It's one integrated thing.
Amen.
It's not just the mouth, it's your mouth and your total health. And the science is compounding daily on the correlation between the two. Healthy mouth, healthy body. Unhealthy mouth, it is virtually impossible to be unhealthy here and healthy here. It almost can't happen. That the two are interrelated. So we've said for decades as non-clinicians that your mouth is the window of wellness. You look at somebody's mouth and take a look at what's going on there. It is a window into their overall health. It is key. And so for most Americans will see their dentist more often than any other healthcare practitioner, unless they have some kind of chronic condition where they have to see a specialist on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Most Americans will be in their dental office more than any other place in healthcare. So it becomes the front line of your total health if you're doing what you should do to stay there, be there, and do everything you can to keep this healthy.
So you see that the greatest room for improvement, if I could summarize it, the greatest room for improvement right now in dentistry is the education side to the patients or to the clinicians or to both upon
Everybody.
everybody?
So it would be education of the patient of the correlation, conversations around that, and then coordination, so that we're having whole health discussions in the dental office and pointing patients in the right direction of here's what you need to do, here's who you need to see in order to improve the whole health picture, not just your oral health picture.
You know, you and I have talked in the past about integrative medicine. We're both fans of it.
Sure.
We both believe that there's some fun, unique solutions out there that just pharmaceuticals don't always provide, right? Fair statement?
Fair statement.
Okay. I learned through doing a lot of work with integrative doctors how each tooth correlates to an organ or a part of the body. And do you know how hard it is? Okay, let me back up. Do you know how hard it was for me to accept that? It took me a while.
Okay.
Because I'm sitting there and I'm going, what? Really? And, you know, I'm starting to, and had I not had the exposure to these brightest minds I've ever met on breaking it down for me so a layman like me can understand that. I mean, I'm bought in. I believe it. I do believe that. So, but I mean, quite frankly, you and I are less on the fringe than used to be, but still a little on the fringe. Agreed? On when it comes to the integrative,
and it's coming more and more. I mean,
it's a lot less
people
than
are getting it, yeah.
Right? And so you're talking about building in that relationship or that communication, education to both patients and clinicians. Do you have any ideas or suggestions on how that's going to transpire? Because it's a paradigm shift. You agreed? There's a paradigm where most of America was taught, go see your doctor. He's going to write you a script for whatever ails you, and you'll go on your merry way. Versus looking at the total, comprehensive mouth, physical, emotional, how powerful the emotional side of things I've learned on. And so how do you have any suggestions or thoughts on how, because I do agree with you on that improvement on how we can make strides in that?
So a couple thoughts. One is educating patients on the connection, right? And helping patients understand what the objective is when they come in every time. It's not just to clean your teeth. Is to measure on a regular basis your level of health. How healthy is your immune system? Most patients are not aware that you can measure what's going on in your mouth is a measure of the health of your immune system. In your total body. So your hygienist should be able to give you a reading, give you some feedback on the overall health of your immune system every single time you go into the practice.
Do hygienists know how to do that? I mean, that's the thing. I know you're smiling like that because they don't, right? I mean, most of them don't know how to. I've never been into a hygienist appointment and them talk about anything other than my size of my pockets and try to deep into them. So I'm kidding.
Right?
But yeah, I mean.
But it's the correlation. So what does that mean? So if you have 4 and 5 millimeter pockets with bleeding and infection, what does that mean to your overall health?
Can't be good.
Can be good, but how is it correlated?
Exactly.
What do you do about it? What does it mean? All of those are all topics of conversation.
So that's additional homework I need to do, find some experts to bring onto this to let them help train so that now we got some additional tools for patients to know, to even ask.
Correct.
And clinicians and hygienists.
Yeah.
This project keeps getting bigger and bigger. Okay. Describe for me a stellar patient experience at a practice.
So a number of characteristics. I would say from the first encounter, and I would say the first encounter is what I see on the internet.
Okay.
So how educational is the content on their website? I would check their social media.
Amen.
I would look at their reviews. All of those things would mirror each other to send a consistent message that what they're saying, what patients say about them, So it's informative, it's heartfelt, it's credible. But I would look at all three of those: website, social media, reviews, what patients are saying. So that speaks volumes. Number two is when I call the office, is the person that I'm talking to courteous, knowledgeable, and patient focused? Or are they transaction focused and they just, schedule an appointment, get you in, and they're just doing a function? So this is a high touch procedure. This is a major investment. It is life changing, and the entire experience should reflect that. So am I talking to somebody who, for lack of a better description, is wrapping their arms around me and from hello is taking very, very good care of me to understand what I want, to make sure it's convenient, that things are well described, things are well explained, and that I have the comfort to move forward. So all of those before I even step foot in the practice. From the moment I arrive, that I'm expected, that when I walk in, it's not, may I help you? But it is, Mr. Griffin, it's so nice to see you, and we're glad you're here. We've been expecting you, right? This isn't a factory. This isn't an implant factory that they're expecting you, and they take great care of you. The next is that someone on the team, whether it's the dentist, the treatment coordinator, but somebody on the team sits down with you first before anybody ever does an exam and sits down with you to truly understand what you want, what you're looking for, what your experience has been, and what the real outcome is that you want. So it is a person-focused conversation, not a tooth-focused conversation. The teeth will come later, but what do you as the patient, what are you really looking for? What's been your past experience? And what is it that you're really looking to accomplish?
How often should that be the dentist? And I don't mean to interrupt you, but how often should that conversation be the clinician versus an office manager, business manager?
The dentist needs to be included in that at some point. Every practice is different, right? So I would say this is a team effort. So the most important thing is that someone on that team sits down with you and truly understands what you're looking for, and then everybody on the team is plugged into that. Next is that you have a sit-down communication with the clinician, the doctor, the dentist, who is actually going to do the work, and sit down so that they truly understand you and they're plugged into all of those things that we've talked about. They understand the outcomes and what you're truly seeking for. Next, when we get to the clinical part, that the exam is clear, that you're involved in that. It's an interactive process. It's not, you're cut off and they're just working on you. They shouldn't be working on you at this point. They should be working with you.
Great point.
So good communication to say, Matt, here's what we're going to do first. We're going to take some pictures of your mouth, and what that's going to allow us to do is look beyond what the eye can see, and we're going to look at bone structure. We're going to look at how much we have to work with. We're going to take a look at all your existing things. In other words, they explain to you what they're doing and why and what they're seeing. They include you in the process, right? So that you're a partner in the process. You're not just a subject of what they're doing. Then, once that explanation is clear and you've gone through the co-discovery process, now it's time to talk about what can we do for your particular situation and your condition, for what you want to accomplish. What can we do? What are the options to give you the best outcome that you said you wanted? Here are the options. Here's what we can do. Here's the plan that we would recommend. A good clinician will make a solid recommendation. They won't give you a bunch of choices. They won't say, Matt, you could do this, or you could do that, or you could do this, and confuse you with a lot of different options. If they truly understand you, then they should be able to say, Matt, for what you said you wanted and what we know how to do to get that outcome, this is the treatment we would recommend. Now, there might be other options that we could discuss, but here is the optimal choice for you and what we would recommend. I want a clinician that has the courage of their convictions in what they recommend. If they're not confident in their recommendation, I want a different clinician. I want somebody who can back up what they recommend with the courage to make the recommendation and to stand behind it. So now that I've had that, once I've got the recommendation and I have the confidence in the team and the clinician that they can deliver, now it's up to, we have to talk about the details. So that's process, that's scheduling, that's financial arrangements. So that should be with somebody who can clearly lay out what my investment is, what my payment options are, what the timing is that's involved, all of those details. They make it easy for me to do all of the other things to get what I want. Then after that, it's clear communication every step along the way. Clearly scheduled appointments, when things are going to happen, what I need to do every step along the way, so that I have a clear path and I understand what my part is. Then we go through the process, and then on the other side, it's follow-up, that they take care of me and have a clear path of what happens after the procedure. Because whatever you have done, it's got to be taken care of. So whatever that looks like, my responsibility and what I need to do to get the best return on my investment, that's clearly mapped out for me. So that's a lot. I mean, for the ideal patient experience, that's what I would say would be a 10 experience.
Because a lot of our audience, I feel, is going to be watching this before they've gone through this, right? They're not looking at this through the rear view. They're looking at this through the windshield.
Right.
How do you prepare somebody to have the financial conversation? You know, and here's what I mean by that. God, I'm cynical, Steve. I mean, God's working on me, but I'm a cynical guy, especially when it comes to attorneys and dentists. I'm glad you brought the attorney side of things up, because I guess in the past, I haven't felt the value, right? There's a big difference between cost and value, right? Just like I mentioned, that one of the nuggets you gave to our viewers, that might not have cost them anything, but it was extremely valuable. And so now I'm a patient. I'm out there. I know it's coming. And again, I do not feel I have gotten the proper value out of my dental work in the past. So I'm going into this jaded. I'm going into this going, I know they're going to hold these sons of guns. And I know, and I'm glad we brought it up before, that you better change your attitude before you step in that chair or you will get hosed, right? If you have your eyes where your eyes go. So let's get our eyes off that. But still, the financial consideration piece of this, the arrangements that need to be made, whether it's cash, and I've told our audience to make sure you got cash, go negotiate. Don't just, if they say 50 grand, go in with cash, get some wheeling and dealing, because they'll do it. They will negotiate some. So dentists probably don't like me for saying that, but it's true. But those that need financing, those that need time laid out, those that need, there's a financial conversation that's going to happen in this, regardless of wherever they stand. How can you help prepare the patient for that financial conversation to make it go smoother for both the patient and the clinician? Not easier, but smoother.
So I'd recommend a couple of things for the financial conversation. One, to keep in mind, you get what you pay for. Mm-hmm. And there will always be somebody who can do it cheaper.
Yeah.
And you get what you pay for. So getting the best deal is not necessarily
the best
deal.
Yeah.
So long term. So I want to know that I'm dealing with somebody who is experienced, that knows what they're doing, and will get the outcome that I want. Okay, that's the return on the investment. So this isn't about cost. This is about a return. Right? So for example, if I'm going to go out and buy a car, I shop it. right? If I know the make, the model, the brand, the features that I want, then I'm shopping for a car and I'm going to go look for the very, very best price, because I can go to any number of dealers and I know that everybody's got the same product. As long as I got all my feet, I'm shopping that and I'm going to get the very cheapest price. That's not what we're doing here. An all-on-4 procedure and having implants is not like shopping for a car. What you're buying is you're buying the expertise and the experience of a clinician who is going to get the outcome that you want for the rest of your life. That's a whole different proposition. You're buying the person, not just the product. So, and then I'm making an investment for a return down the road of whatever the benefits I want. Peace of mind, better health, confidence, all those things. So where can I invest to get the best return? So that's number one. Number two, it ought to be clear, right? So the presentation ought to be clear. If I'm the patient, don't nitpick the plan.
Amen.
Right? In other words, if I'm presented a plan, if there happen to be line item things, don't go item by item and say, well, we can take this off. Can we take that off? I mean, don't mess with the plan, right? There might be options of things you can include, but don't start picking apart the process. Third is there should be options. There should be payment options, right? The practice is put in place to make it more convenient for me. So depending on what my budget is. So can I finance this? Is there a courtesy for paying in advance if I can do that? In other words, do they have payment options that I can choose from based on my particular situation, right?
Yeah.
So those things.
Yeah.
If I'm prepared with that in mind, I'm going to have a lot easier conversation.
I guess I'm living proof. You know, I mean, I went to Costa Rica because I figured this much money to get implants done, I can take this portion, go have a heck of a vacation, and we did. It was phenomenal. But 6 months later, I needed a new implant.
You get what you pay for.
You do. And that's, you know, we interviewed, and I brought this up, I believe, to a couple of the clinicians that we've already interviewed for this, but one of the patients here locally that we interviewed, I asked him, I said, how many clinics did you go to? What prices were you quoted? And, you know, he brought up a great point. He goes, you know, I went to one that quoted almost, I think it was $8,000 cheaper. He goes, but you get what you pay for.
Right.
And there's this XY axis, right? You know, and it doesn't always fall. How would you, oh God, I know that's tough to even do it in this conversation, Steve, but maybe we can have a follow-up or create some kind of infographic. But the longer somebody's been practicing this, the more skill, the more they've invested into their schooling, the more they've invested into their technology, the more they've invested into their team, they should charge a little higher price, right? And so there's this access that as a patient, I want to know, I would rather spend $55,000 versus $45,000 for the full mouth if I know that return on investment is going to be better. But most patients, you know, think as I thought. I mean, this is not a judgment against any patient, but okay, it's a screw. You're zipping a screw in, you're tightening in a tooth. How hard can it be? You know, after I've gone through a couple of them, it ain't. I can't do it. And I can hang some mighty fine pictures on the wall, but I can't screw some stuff in the bone. And so I guess there'll be a time I'd love to even think with you and for a different conversation on how we can help show that value proposition, because that's really what it is.
Sure.
So Steve, now that we've gone around the world and back, let's talk about, for the patient out there, let's give them some practical application.
Okay.
You mentioned the stellar patient experience, and a lot of that starts before you go into a practice. So what would be the top 5 questions you could think of off the top of your head they should ask over the phone?
You ask these questions and they will know that you are not just the everyday ordinary patient. So first question I would ask is, if I am going to have this procedure done, whatever it is, who is the clinician? Who's actually going to do the work? I
Okay.
want to know who that is. Then if they have multiple clinicians, it's like who, okay? And if there's multiple to choose from, then I want to know what my choices are. Question number two, what has their education been and where did they get specific implant training?
Mm.
And I, for me, I want names of the places where they train. Now, the team's probably going to go, I have no idea. I'll have to get back to you. So, yeah, I want to know where they trained. Is this some kind of weekend course they took?
Right.
Or have they been through hours and hours and hours at an accredited implant institute that teaches the proper way to do these things? So not just have they, but where did they train? How many hours of training have they had? And then next, how many actual procedures have they done for how long?
Great point.
Right? So how many patients, how many procedures, if it's an implant related, how many units of implants, okay? How many implants have they actually placed in the last year and in the last, 5 years, 10 years? Because with experience comes wisdom.
Mm.
The more I've done, then the more I have drawn, the more likely I am to be successful.
Yep.
Then the last question, and this is very, very specific, is how do they actually place the implant?
No, that's a great question.
And this gets into more specific clinical things, but do they use a surgical guide to place the implant? So today, and I'm not the clinician, and you have more people that will describe this in more detail, but today, with all the CAD CAM technology that we have, an implant can be placed with precision, with no margin of error. So with a surgical guide, it can be done. I could place it, well, I
Right.
can't, but
Right.
a surgical guide adds to the predictability of the procedure. So that's the last question I would ask is does the clinician use a surgical guide to place implants? So those are 5 things. There'd be more, but those would be my top 5. Now they will know when you ask those questions, they will know that you are a very educated patient.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. That sets you apart and you will get top priority because they know you're coming in and you're educated and you know what you're looking for.
It's a great point. It empowers you before you walk through the door. It's great. Okay, so now when I'm doing my homework, I'm looking at websites, I'm looking at reviews, I'm looking at what the community has to say about these doctors. I've narrowed it down to 5, and now I've narrowed that down to 5. I've made these phone calls. What would you recommend? How many places should a patient go to before making a decision?
I think it depends. I think it depends on the procedure.
So All-On-X, big procedure.
2 or 3 maybe. I think you can tell a lot online and phone conversations. And again, you're not shopping. You're not doing this for price. What you're buying is a practitioner that you have confidence in that will get the result you want. You have to be very, very clear on what your objective is and why you're going in to have the conversation. Who are you buying? And then make sure you go with the person that you have the most confidence in that will get you the result you want.
Okay, so now we've narrowed it down out of those 5. So we maybe started with a list of 15. Then we've gone through this whole process. We've narrowed it down to 5. Now out of those 5, we've called, we've asked these questions. 3 of those 5 are our top bidding. So we make a consultation to go to those. How important is it that the consultation's free? And in this game, it's a big deal, right? I mean, most of them are, some aren't.
Yeah. Some will, some won't. I think you've got to make that decision on your own of what's important to you. That's a practice model question. So if it's free, they'll probably take some diagnostics, and rightfully so, those diagnostics will stay with that practice. If it's paid, if your consult is paid and they take diagnostics, then you should be entitled to take those diagnostics with you. If you paid for them, they belong to you. So again, you get what you pay for. If you're paying for the consult, you should be able to take whatever diagnostics with you. If it's free, then the diagnostics probably stay with the practice. But again, that's a question you'd have to ask.
If you had the diagnostics, is it easier to ask others their opinion?
Sure. I mean, if you could take your, your X-rays, your all those things to another practitioner, it streamlines the conversation. Sure.
Okay. So now you've gone to these three, or you've got 3 appointments scheduled. Now, you've already given us some great things to look at and be on the lookout for on the experience. So now we've already got a more educated patient that's walking through that door. They now sit down with the part of where you were saying someone in the practice needs to have the conversation with them about what their main objectives are. Yes?
Correct.
What are the top 5 questions you should ask? I don't know if it'd be that person or the clinician. Let's just go with the clinician. Clinician comes in the room. What are the top 5? You already know. Would you want to validate those questions that you already asked over the phone to see if the questions align? The answers align?
Yeah, all of those things that I mentioned before, those are what I call objective questions. In other words, they're factual based questions. How much training, how many hours, how many units have you placed? Those are just fact based. They're objective questions. Once I get face to face with the team and the dentist, I'm going to ask subjective questions.
Okay, walk me through them.
Those subjective questions are when I tell them what I'm looking for, then when I ask them questions like, can you share with me some experiences of other patients who have been looking for this outcome? Tell me about their experience. And if their answers are vague, then that would create a little bit of a question mark for me, because then I'd say, how really plugged in are they to their patients and what they really want? Versus if they said, Matt, last month we had a patient who came to us for the same reasons you did. They wanted the peace of mind of knowing they were making the right decision for work that was going to last, that they didn't have to worry about, and would give them the self-confidence that they could go out and smile big and not have to worry about what people were seeing. Yeah. That's what they wanted, just like what you said. Now, here's what they've experienced after they had the procedure. This is what they told us, right? That's the kind of conversation versus a clinician who says, oh, you'll love it. All of our patients have a great experience. It's vague and general, just kind of once over lightly. I want somebody who's plugged into the human side of what the work does for people, not just the work itself.
So what would be some questions you could arm patients for, not only on asking, tell me some previous ones, what are some additional questions they can go in with a sheet, which I'm going to be building out. I'm going to build them a checklist I'm going to build them a checklist on during the consultation, sure, and then help them do a report card at the end. But what would be some of those questions you would add to that list to ask that clinician, other than tell me about other patients?
So number one is the degree to which I can get the outcome that I want. How confident are you that you can give me the outcome that I want? Not just the teeth, but the outcome. So I want to hear from them. That's number one. Number two is, what can I expect? As far as from, yes, I want to have this done, to through the procedure, what's the experience going to be like? What can I expect from you? Number three is, what are you worried about?
Great question.
Not what should I be worried? What are you worried about? When you do a case, what are the most important things you look at that could potentially go wrong?
It's a great question.
That you're looking to avoid, or that you always have top of your mind going, we want to make sure we do these things, so that, in other words, if a case goes south, why does it go south?
Yeah.
because the implant was placed wrong, or the bone didn't take the implant, or what are the things you're worried about? And if they say, well, I'm not worried about anything, I'd say,
Run.
we might have a problem, right?
Yeah.
In other words, they got to have things that are top priorities. And then I would look them straight in the eye and I would say, if I were your mother or your father, would you recommend this and charge me for it? And then see if they flinch. Right?
That's fantastic.
See if they flinch. If they don't have the courage of their convictions on what they're recommending, I'd wonder.
Okay, last question. You've given me 4. Give me one more.
I would say finally is if I don't do it here, where would I have it done? In other words, if you needed this work, if you were me and you needed this work, you couldn't do it yourself, where would you go?
Oh, that would be an interesting conversation. I would have never
And
thought
so
that.
here's why I say that.
That is so great.
The right clinician will immediately go to their mentor. And they would say, the person I would go to if I weren't doing it would be the person who taught me the most about this procedure. Because that's where I got my wisdom, my knowledge. And they might be in Sweden, they might be in France, they might be in New York, wherever they are, but they are, in other words, great people surround themselves with great people.
Amen.
So if they can't immediately say, here's my go-to guy, this is the guy I trust, who's taught me the most, who's expanded my entire life in this area, and that's where I would go.
That's a genius question. Well done.
And if they won't answer that,
That's right. Or they hem and haw, and
right.
I mean, and that's one of the in one of our previous interviews with a patient, we talked about the gut.
Sure.
As a patient, you've got a sense of, and if that team, because one of the things we talked about was paying attention to how a team interacts with the doctor. I think that's a good thing to look at. Does the team respect the doctor, and does the doctor respect the team?
Sure. That's
one of the important ones that I think. And yet, if an RDA is coming in and they're timid and scared and that kind of stuff, how confident is the team, I guess? And so, any of the trusting your gut in asking these questions, and you gave me some that I didn't even think of, Stephen. That's shows your wisdom, and you've been down this road a lot longer than I have. But I think that's going to help patients out a ton. As we wrap this up, help me think. Is there anything I missed? Is there anything I didn't ask?
I'd say the biggest question as a patient, the biggest question to ask yourself is, what is the cost of inaction? In other words, because usually it's not a question of, should I choose this clinician or that clinician? More often than not, it's choosing between doing this or not doing it all. I've lived the way I've lived for so long, maybe I'll just put up with this, longer. So what is the true cost of inaction? Because that is the biggest cost. Not the money you'll pay for the procedure. It's the cost of not moving forward.
The loss of enjoyment, the loss of time, the loss of functionality, the health costs,
all of those things that you've been suffering with, or what's the cost of inaction? And so what's it worth to move forward and make an investment that will have huge returns financially, emotionally, spiritually, in every area of your life? And that's the return.
Ironically, financially, there are financial returns.
100%.
Especially for you do anything like we do on the public speaking side of things,
Sure.
the business side of things. Any career you're in, it just has an effect.
Yep.
Good, bad, or otherwise, it does. Steve, I really appreciate you taking the time, sharing 30 plus years of wisdom. I don't take that for granted. successful people surround themselves with successful people. So I thank you for letting us be a part of your life and your wisdom and sharing this with us. And for the patients out there, I want to say thank you from them, because we are patients, right? And so a discipleship model to be able to help empower those patients to make, and to give a fresh name to dentistry. I appreciate your outlook on it. It helped me some. It really did, because I have to watch myself on banging that drum too much of but
Right.
it is, the good ones out there are life changers. They really are. So
Yeah, thank you.